Hello and welcome back. Ovechkin nearly broke the record at home last night. 2 goals, tied Wayne Gretzky in one fewer game. And not only that, but he was the best player in fantasy last week. 5 goals, 3 assists, 4 power play points in just 4 games. And this is the time of year you're either done and you're probably not watching this video, or you're now in your fantasy championship and you need that level of production for this week. So we'll go over the schedule for week 25 as we always do. But first, I do want to do another reminder to remind you guys to fill out the draft strategy form and put in where you finished in the regular season and the playoffs. It'll be really quick. All you got to do is go back, fill in what it'll update your current existing record, but this will help us get accurate strategy data that we can use to analyze for next year. So this is very important. I want to thank you all for participating in this if you did so. But now let's move it on to the schedule for week 25. This is the week with 10 games. So this is the week that you should not use for your fantasy championship. But obviously, if you have that already, then there's nothing you can do about it. But obviously for next year, you want to change this because there are teams that are going to be resting their players for this week, especially teams that are in the playoffs that are clinched. They don't want to get their guys hurt. So they're going to look at some of these games as an opportunity to give their guys some rest. This has screwed me in the past. That one particular year where Boston was making that humongous push, they were setting the record for the most wins in the regular season. They rested a bunch of their guys down the stretch, and that screwed me out of a fantasy championship. Don't let that happen to you. So next year, change this if this is your championship week. But if it's your week this year, there's a number of teams that you can find some exposure to. You see them down here on the left. You've got the Rangers, Edmonton, Tampa Bay, Buffalo, Anaheim, Carolina, San Jose, Columbus, Toronto, Detroit, and the Islanders. There's a bunch of light night games in there. We'll go over those. You've got Calgary with 5 games, but 3 light nights. And then the teams on the right, Minnesota, Boston, Colorado, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, only 4 games, and Boston and Colorado with no light nights. So this is how it breaks down. The best schedule this week is Edmonton. They've got a really nice setup with a couple of easy games against Anaheim. That's maybe not easy, but easier. Anaheim, they've got San Jose twice. They play Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday. So 5 of their 6 games are on light nights. They do have 2 difficult games here on a back-to-back with some travel. These will be low-scoring games, so that might factor in if you're looking at Calvin Pickard as an option. We'll go over him in the goaltending section. They do have this game against St. Louis. That's not going to be easy. They've won 11 in a row, but this is one of the better setups this week. So we'll go over all the options you can find from Edmonton. You also have San Jose on a nice week here. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday to start it off, even though this is not necessarily light. There's 9 games, but they've got 3 of the 4 technical light night games. Then they've got Monday, which is light, and then Wednesday, which is light. So of these, they've also got 5 out of their 6 games on light nights. These are some difficult opponents, though, and they're not necessarily the best team, but there's a number of guys you can find off the waiver wire if you're looking for Power Play 1 exposure, and we'll go over all of that. Tampa Bay, they've got a couple of really nice setups here, and they do not have a back-to-back. They've got a really nice Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, no back-to-backs. They're playing the absolute dog shit New York Rangers twice, so that should help with some offensive production. They've also got Buffalo, who's usually bad defensively, and Detroit, who's not the best defensively either. So there's some opportunity for some offense from their middle 6 guys and some defense, which we'll go over in this section. The Rangers, as I mentioned, dog shit, lost again today. You can tell how happy I am about that. They did not deserve a playoff spot with the way that they've played this year. Could not string 3 wins together since October. They've got Tampa Bay twice at home. They've got the defending Cup champions on the road. They've got the division leading Carolina Hurricanes. Actually, they're not division leading. That's Washington. But they usually are one of the best teams in the division. They've got the Islanders, who are no slouch at this point, and Philly, who usually play the Rangers pretty well. So not the easiest week for the Rangers, not a whole lot that you would want to own anyway. Then you've got Anaheim. They've got Edmonton, Calgary, LA. They've got Colorado, Minnesota, Winnipeg, so some difficult opponents. A couple of back-to-backs, so you might see both goaltenders. You've got Dostal and Gibson, maybe both available. We're not going to cover them in the goaltending section because there are a number of other guys that are getting it done that you could potentially find, so stick around for that. And then some of these other teams we'll go over in the best of the rest section. But for now, let's start it off by looking at the best schedule this week, and that is the Edmonton Oilers. Now, the bad news with Edmonton is that all of their top guys are owned up. Draisaitl, McDavid, Bouchard at 99. You've got Nuge at 79, Hyman at 94, and then even their top D, you've got Wallman at 69, Ekholm at 63, Nurse at 71, and they are all fantasy relevant for various purposes. Nurse getting the hits, blocks, and shots. Wallman with some blocks and some offensive production. Ekholm, you know what he brings, about half a point per game, some hits and blocks, a couple of other factors here. But in terms of what we can find, because of the injuries to McDavid and Draisaitl, there are other guys getting some power play time and getting elevated roles in the lineup. And three of them we're going to talk about here. So we'll start it off by looking at one of the better power play options. That's Adam Henrique. I believe he's center left wing, dual position eligible. Currently listed line 4, power play 2, only 3% owned. And on the season, not that impressive. None of these numbers look particularly great, but you can see here in the past 6 games, 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points, 3 of those coming on the power play. So whether or not they're using him on the first unit or second unit, I guess it doesn't matter as much if he's putting up that many power play points in the last 6 games. So he might be one of your best deep league options, and he's dual position eligible, so that's going to help as well. I don't like the line 4 deployment. The second line power play unit is pretty decent. You'd obviously prefer the first unit. So if you're looking for a couple of other options with a little bit more peripherals, because there's not a lot here, there's only 1.3 shots per game, no hitting, hardly any blocks, just a touch of those power play points, which have come all recently. You can also take a look at Jeff Skinner, who's typically more of a shot volume guy, 2.08 shots per game, line 3 and power play 1. So the power play 1 deployment is the main thing to note here. He is going to get you a little bit better power play exposure. I don't know about power play points. In his last 6 games, he's got 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points, but 0 power play points. So Henrique with a little bit worse deployment with more power play production. Skinner with a little bit better deployment with no production. So take your pick as to which you prefer. Obviously, we know Skinner's a little bit more of a goal scorer at 79th percentile, 15 goals in 65 games, only 2 power play points on the year. So you're still kind of digging from the bottom of the barrel with these guys. And then last but not least, we've got Victor Arvidsson. He's line 1. I don't see a power play deployment for him, but occasionally he does get on the power play because he's got 3 goals in his last 6 games, and one of those is a power play goal. So with that and the increased shot volume at 2.3 shots per game, he's typically been a guy who gets a ton of shot volume in the past. He just hasn't found it this year in Edmonton. It's been a really difficult fit for him. 13 goals, 12 assists, 25 points on the season is not the best season for Victor Arvidsson, and he always struggles to stay healthy, but he usually puts up better production than this. The average shooting percentage is okay. With that shot volume, the goals should come, and they have been with 3 goals in the last 6. So nothing crazy here, but a bunch of different options at different ownership percentages. You saw Skinner at 27, Arvidsson at 12, and Henrique at 3%. And then last, there's Vasily Podkolzin, who's going to get you those hits. 2.56 hits per game, 92nd percentile there. He's got 23 hits in his last 6 games with an assist, and he's playing top line minutes right now. So the minutes are going to help you pile on the volume in terms of the hits. And again, if you look at this schedule, it's a perfect setup where if you've got these fringe guys who are not necessarily the most offensive, they are going to get some opportunities here against Anaheim, against San Jose again on that final day of, not the final day, but their final game of the season. So there are a couple of opportunities. These games are going to be tight defensively more than likely. So is this one. I can't see, I imagine the Blues are going to lose at some point, but I don't know if this is going to be their loss here, but there are at least 3 games that you could find some offensive production from some of these guys. So I thought I'd give you a couple options. There is another potential option coming over in the trade deadline, Trent Frederick, another hits option, 4% owned, 2.72 hits per game. If he's in the lineup, you can go and grab him for that, but he has not been in the lineup. You can see no games played over the last 6. So if he's in, go ahead and grab him. If he's not, then obviously your best bet for hits is Podkolzin. But again, there's not a ton that you can find off of Edmonton. Usually there's a little bit more than usual with this setup, but still maybe not the best team. So let's move it along and go to the next team that we're going to talk about, and that is one of the teams that is featured down here at the bottom, and that is the San Jose Sharks. For San Jose, the complete opposite of what we saw with Edmonton. Almost everybody is ownable. Even Celebrini down here at 61% is relatively ownable. If you're in a shallow league and Celebrini is available, definitely go out and grab Celebrini for obvious reasons. One of the things I'll look at just as we click his name, he's not necessarily a file we're going to touch on too much, but The shot volume, 3.4 shots per game, is excellent. 98th percentile, 95th in power play, 92nd in assists, 91st in goals, 93rd in points per game. This is a rookie we're talking about, so this is very impressive. You can see over the course of the season, his rating has just continued to climb and grow, and he's kind of plateaued in this mid-70s range, but that's still a really good place to be. Line 1, power play 1, so if he is available, definitely go out and grab Celebrini. I doubt he is available. And with that, he's got 4 assists in his last 6 games, so he's still continuing on at a reasonable pace over this stretch. But likely he's not available for you if you're in a 12-team league or maybe even a 14-team league. So there's a bunch of other options that we can talk about. One guy that we usually talk about for hits, Mario Ferraro, has 5 assists in his last 6 games. He's on the first unit, not getting any power play time. 1.92 hits per game, 1.6 blocks per game. So he is your hits and blocks defenseman for the week in terms of San Jose Sharks ads, but he's also factoring in a little bit of offense lately, which is surprising. He's not necessarily known for that, and obviously only 17 points on the season in 75 games. He's relatively low in that point per game number, 38th percentile. So a lot of those points that have come in the last 6 games make up a huge chunk of this. Almost a third of all of his point production happened in the last 6 games. So he's probably your best hits and blocks option for this week, heading into a week where they've got 6 games, and you can see them all down at the bottom there with a couple of light nights. Now, if you're looking for a forward, there's a couple we can talk about. We'll start it off with William Eklund. If he's available, definitely go grab him. He's going to get you that power play 1 exposure, line 2, power play 1. The assists are really nice, 93rd percentile. Power play is decent, 89th percentile. So he's been cemented there on that top unit for a while now. The shot volume is a touch low, but it's still right around 2 shots per game. And he's got 5 points in his last 6, 2 goals, 3 assists in that span, 1 power play point for Eklund as well. So he's still getting that power play production, relatively speaking. So he would be a really decent option in a 12-team league, 20% owned. If you're looking for something with a little bit more shot volume, obviously you've got Tyler Toffoli. 2.96 shots per game, 96th percentile there. That's why you're going to look for Toffoli. That plus the goal scoring, 94th percentile, 28 goals on the season. He will more than likely hit 30 this year, which is really nice for a goal scorer who has pretty much hit 30 every year for the last 5 or 6 years. Line 1, power play 1, 37% is reasonable. That's probably what you would expect, but if he is available, he's your best option, offensively speaking, from San Jose this week. You can see trending up for quite a while, a little bit up and down, and then a little bit down between the last week. So not necessarily the most productive, but he's still got 3 goals, an assist, and 4 points in that span, and a power play point. So he is on that power play unit with Eklund, and he's going to be more of the trigger man. So if you're looking for some shot volume, some goal scoring, if those are a little bit heavier weighted in your points leagues, this is a guy that you definitely want to have your eyes on. There is another potential option for you. We've talked about Wenberg, I think, once in the past. He's maybe not the best option, but he is going to get you a little bit of exposure. I'm not sure what line he's on right now. I don't have that. I don't know why that's not popping up, but the shot volume is really, really low, and that's going to be the main detriment to his file. But he does get some power play assists, and he has played better since the trade deadline. He started to actually put up some production once they started moving players out and elevating him in the lineup. I'm not sure exactly where he is in the lineup at this point. Looking for anything at the bottom of the barrel, I probably would lean towards somebody else at this point, but Wenberg is another potential option for you. You can see a bunch of the other players that have been traded that are still in this list just because of the fact that they were in the preseason listed as San Jose Sharks, but Zetterlund's gone, Granlund's gone, Wallman's gone, so a lot of these guys are gone, and that's going to increase the opportunities for some of these other guys. And obviously, another guy that we talked about in the past is Will Smith. Line 1 and power play 1 as well. His numbers for the season don't look as impressive. The power play numbers are not bad. 11 power play points in 67 games, and a lot of those have come lately, not necessarily in the last 6. He's only got 2 assists in that span, but since the trade deadline since the trade deadline, getting elevated in the lineup, he's been putting up a little bit more production. And you can see 80th percentile in assists, 82nd in power play, still a little bit low in the shot volume, no peripherals to speak of. But he has been trending up basically back here. This is the trade deadline right around the beginning of March, and he kind of plateaued a little bit here. So that's why he's not necessarily the top of the mind here in terms of your ads for this week, but he's definitely worth an ad if you're in a deep league. 11% is a little bit high, but you're still getting that power play 1 and line 1 exposure. So that will help you in a week like this. That's going to do it for this team. There may be some options on our next team, and that. So what I notice off the bat with Tampa Bay is obviously their top power play unit is completely owned up. Kucherov, Hagel, Point, Gensel, Hedman, all of those guys are power play 1. They are completely owned up. So if you want that power play 1 exposure, you're probably going to have to look at San Jose, maybe Edmonton, maybe even Anaheim, who we haven't touched on yet, but we will get to a couple of options from. But with all of that said, there are a couple of options on power play 2 that have been relatively productive. So we'll start it off with Oliver Bjorkstrand coming over from the Seattle Kraken at the trade deadline, 13% owned, line 3, power play 2. He's usually a really good per 60 goal scorer, and we can see that happening lately. 20 goals in 75 games on the year is not bad. 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points in his last 7. He's right in that ideal shooting range because he doesn't shoot a ton, 1.92. So he's got a decent shooting percentage that is probably sustainable. The goal production, 84th percentile, a little bit over half a point per game, and a couple of power play points, 10 power play points on the season. So he's one of your better options, mainly for a little bit of shot volume, some goal scoring, and some power play exposure. When he first came over, they were featuring him on that first unit, kind of in the Stamkos spot. I think they've scrapped that. We also saw Darren Radish in that spot at various points. He's no longer in that spot, but he is also on the second power play unit. So we'll pivot to Darren Radish. He's technically line 4 because they go 11 and 7. So he is technically listed on line 4 according to Daily Faceoff, but he is on power play 2. So that's where a lot of his production is going to come. 4 assists in the last 7 games, one of those coming on the power play. So still getting some power play production, 8 power play points on the season. Most of it is assist heavy, 30 assists, 5 goals. So he is 88th percentile in assists. The shot volume is a little bit low. The blocks are a little bit low. So you can do better than this. One of the guys that I did want to talk about, since we're talking about some of these defensemen, if I can scroll and find him, Ryan McDonough, usually a shot blocker, not much of a hitter, 0.28 hits per game. You can see him with the blocks, though, almost 2 blocks per game, 96th percentile. He's 16% owned, and yet he's got 7 points in his last 7 games. He's not known for this. He does occasionally have that in him to be a little bit more offensive, and it seems like now that is happening. You could see what it's done for his rating, going from a 28, which is not fantasy ownable, all the way up to a 32, which is still not that fantasy ownable, but when he's a point per game over the last 7, you probably want to have that on your radar. Shooting percentage is low. He's not going to score that many goals. He's only got 3 goals on the season in 75 games. So not a goal scorer, not a shot volume guy, under a shot per game. He does not have a power play point on the season. Actually, he might have 1 power play point on the season, but that is not what you're owning him for. You're getting blocks and some assists out of Ryan McDonough. So there are a couple of options from the back end. You could also look at Nick Perbix. He's got 4 points in his last 7. It's pretty dastardly here as well. There's not a lot going on. You're not getting much of anything. No shots, no hits, no power play, hardly any blocks, and not much offensive production. But for whatever reason, he's got 4 points in his last 7. Now, if you're looking at some forwards, there are a bunch of other options that have come across. You obviously have Bjorkstrand. You've got Nick Paul, who's occasionally been on power play 1 in the past couple of years. He's not there now. 3 points in his last 7, 2 goals, 1 assist is not great. He's 10% owned. The goal production is pretty decent given the fact that he's not necessarily been given that power play 1 exposure. He's only got 5 power play points on the year. 22 goals in 69 games is really impressive for Nick Paul. Center, left wing, dual eligible, 89th percentile in goals. Shot volume is a little bit underwhelming at 1.9, but it's better than some of the other D that we just looked at. In terms of what you're going to get peripherals wise, there's not a whole lot, but he's close to a hit per game, which I guess is decent for a guy at 10% ownership. Line 2, power play 2, and penalty kill 1 for Nick Paul. So he's going to get you some decent minutes. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of peripherals in those minutes, and you're just hoping for some scoring out of him. There are a couple of other options down the middle that you can look at. We can take a look at Anthony Cirelli. He, I believe, is listed on the second line with Hagel, and I can't remember who else they have on that line, but Seemed to like him in terms of a defensive shutdown role, but he has been relatively productive. 26 goals on the season in 73 games, 53 points is pretty decent as well. 92nd percentile in goals. Didn't expect that from Cirelli. He's a little bit higher owned up because of that, though. So 42% ownership. He may or may not be there for you. The shot volume is the best of the bunch that we've seen so far at 2 shots per game. The blocks are decent. You're maybe going to get a block here and there. So if you're hoping to get that occasionally, you will get a little bit of that. Only 5 power play points on the year, so not a lot there. So a lot of this is coming 5-on-5. And the shooting percentage is pretty decent at 17.8%. So 4 points in his last 7 for Cirelli. We could also talk about the return of Yanni Gourde. So Gourde comes back over. I believe he's line 3, power play 2. His ownership is way lower than a guy like Cirelli. He's got 4 points in his last 7 games. All of those are assists, and that's what he's known for here, 84th percentile in assists. The hits are good, though, so 1.9 hits per game. In a week like this where you're going to get volume, and all of these games are very nicely spaced out. So you've got the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, and then you've got Tuesday, Thursday, but there's no back-to-backs. So you should expect some hitting volume from a guy like Gourde, and you can hopefully expect some offensive production. The Rangers are garbage defensively, and they play them twice at MSG. Detroit's not the best defensively. Buffalo's not the best defensively, so they've got a bunch of different opportunities to get some depth scoring from some of these guys. And you can find a lot of these guys on your waiver wire, only 4% for Yanni Gourde. If you're looking for peripherals, Eric Chernak is going to be maybe your best hits and blocks option on the second D pairing. Only 2 points in his last 7, but you're owning him for the hits and blocks. 2.2 hits per game, 1.3 blocks per game. That's what you're going to get out of him. Maybe occasional point production just because he's on the ice with a lot of these high-end offensive players, but he might be your best hits and blocks option of the bunch for this week just because of the fact that he's 87th percentile and 84th in both of those categories. So a bunch of different options from Tampa Bay, which is not something that we've always said because this is a very top-heavy offensive team, but these are some of the options. Now let's take it and look at all of the teams that have the 4-game weeks this week, including looking at every team that has a 6-game week over the next 10 days. This is how it shakes out. There's a bunch of different options. You can see here, as we're just looking at this table on the left, you can see how high Eklund is in his total points. 55 points in 70 games has him second on this list, and he's only 20% owned. That's why we mentioned him in the video. Earlier in this video, you've got Patrick Kane. We'll talk about him, but just wanted to show you where these guys factor. This is filtered down to 69% ownership or lower. So there's a bunch of different options. Obviously, if Matthew Nyes is available, definitely go and grab him. Same thing with Celebrini. And there's a number of other guys that we'll get to. So some of the hottest guys in the entire league, we're going to start it off with a guy that was mentioned in our Discord group this past week, Jackson Blake. People were like, who is this guy? It's the son of Jason Blake, former NHLer, line 1, power play 1, and he is red hot. 7 points in his last 7 games, 4 goals, 3 assists, 4 power play points in that span. So a lot of his production, 7 out of his 31 points coming in the last 7 games, the last 2 weeks. 4 of his 7 power play points coming in that span as well. So you can see him from mid-March all the way up till now taking a nice healthy bump in the right direction. Nothing crazy in terms of peripherals or even shot volume. Even his power play production for the season's not that great, but excellent deployment right now, and he's making the most of it with a point per game average over this span. Now, another guy from the same team that we have to talk about came over in the trade deadline, and he was the one that they actually kept instead of, Rantanen comes over, they flip him, but they add in Taylor Hall. He's been actually more productive than Stankoven at this point. So 7 points in his last 7 games, 5 goals, 2 assists, 5 power play points over this 7-game stretch. He has been on fire. And this is a guy that even when he was productive, I never wanted on my fantasy team because he disappears for long stretches. And overall, his file is relatively mid. So above a half a point per game, but barely. He's got 17 goals on the year. You can find that pretty much up and down your waiver wire at lower ownership percentage than this. But that line 2 and power play 1 exposure right now, plus the fact that he is red hot entering into this final week of fantasy season, this is a perfect setup to go out and grab a guy like Taylor Hall. There's almost never a perfect setup for Hall, but this is probably it. If there's ever a time to go out and grab him, now would be that. And his shooting percentage is still reasonable at 12.8%. So scoring a ton of goals, but they could still keep coming if he's going to continue to play this way. A number of other options available. I do want to touch on a couple of the Columbus Blue Jackets. We've got Boone Jenner here. He has been excellent since coming back from injury. 46% owned, line 2, power play 1. He's at a point per game. The goal production is excellent. 6 goals in 18 games. Again, it's a small sample size because he's been injured most of the year, but 18 points in 18 games. 6 goals, 12 assists. So really good in terms of his per game metrics. 91st in goals, 96th in assists, 93rd in shot volume, 2.61, and he's 80th in hits, 1.83. If for whatever reason he's available on your wire and you're in a categories league and this is your championship, go out and grab him because he's very complete. You can see a 70 on the combined rating, an 83, basically an 84 on the completeness rating. So one of the more complete players you can find for this week. And he has been very excellent for this Columbus Blue Jackets team, but you're also getting excellent production out of Sean Monahan, who's now back healthy again. Line 1, power play 1, a little bit higher in terms of his roster percentage, 52% owned. He is above a point per game, 1.07, and this goes back a little bit further. So 46 games on the year, that's a lot higher than Jenner. 49 points, 17 goals, 32 assists, 11 on the power play. So all of these offensive metrics are excellent. 2.54 shots per game is 92nd percentile. The assist numbers are 97th. Everything is great here. The only thing is he's a little bit less complete than a guy like Jenner. So his completeness rating at about a 77. So of the two, I would prefer to own Jenner just because of that completeness in a categories league. But if you're looking for some pure offense, that line 1 and power play 1 exposure, Sean Monahan has been excellent since coming back from injury. 8 points, 3 goals, 5 assists in his last 5 games. And same thing for Boone Jenner. He's also got 8 points in his last 5 games, but it's the opposite. I believe it's 5 goals and 3 assists as I turn it over. Yep, the exact opposite. So both guys are very productive lately. They're making a playoff push, or they're at least trying to make a playoff push, unlike the New York Rangers. So this has been a really nice file for a number of these guys. There have been different Columbus Blue Jackets that have been fantasy relevant at different times. Kent Johnson, you've had Fantilli, who's been ownable. You've got Marchenko, who's had a career season. He's relatively owned up, but if you want to have, if you're in a shallow league and for whatever reason Marchenko's there, 6 goals, 2 assists, 8 points in his last 5, so he's hot as well. So a number of different options from the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, as we pivot and take a look at some of the other guys who are red hot entering into this fantasy championship week, if this is your fantasy championship, Ryan McLeod, 3 goals, 7 assists, 10 points in his last 7 games, only 11% owned. So I don't know what got into Ryan McLeod over the past 2 weeks, but he has been on fire. Line 2, power play 2, penalty kill 1. And this is where a lot of his offensive production has come lately. So 48 points on the year is really nice on a team like this that's been out of it for quite a while. Almost 20 goals. He'll probably hit that over the coming week. So he's been relatively productive all year, but he's absolutely taken off in the last 2 weeks. Shot volume is really low, no peripherals to speak of whatsoever, so that's why his ownership is this low. But in terms of Buffalo ads, you saw Peterka as I unfilter this list. He would be your best bet just in terms of what he can provide in terms of raw points. 60 points in 69 games for Peterka. He's 52% owned. So of the two, just given the track record, I would prefer to have a guy like Peterka. 7 games played, 3 goals, 5 assists, 8 points for Peterka as well. So he is also really hot entering into this week. But McLeod is just a touch hotter at 10 points in his last 7. So at 11% ownership, you could do a lot worse than trying to find a guy like that and ride that hot streak. There's a couple of other guys that we can talk about. And as I look at some of these options, I'm not sure if they're right off the top here, but Mason McTavish. So the Ducks also have a 6-game week. You can see over here, McTavish doesn't have the best line assignment, line 3, power play 2, but he has been relatively productive, 5 points in his last 6 games. And you can see here, the shot volume is pretty good, 2.38 shots per game, pretty decent across the board in all these offensive metrics. And when we look at his this last 6-game stretch, he does have a power play point, but he's also got 31 shots on goal in this 6-game span. So over 5 shots per game average in that sample size, and that's going to improve this shots per game. So if he's going to shoot like that, the goals will probably start to come a little bit more, and hopefully they elevate him in the lineup a little bit because he does have that ability. Scoring that huge overtime goal against the Rangers, which was not huge for them, but it was huge for keeping the Rangers out of a playoff spot, which I did not, well, I guess I kind of appreciate it. They definitely don't earn that playoff spot this year. But there's a number of other guys that we can talk about In terms of getting the production, we've talked about Adam Henrique. We've talked about a bunch of these other guys on these other teams. But I think there's a couple of defensemen that you're going to want to have your eye on. And same type of thing in terms of finding those Ducks ads. If I can scroll and find him while I'm talking, this is always the challenge. But Jackson Lacombe, if for whatever reason Lacombe is available, he is your best defensive option. 7 points in his last 6 games, 2 goals, 5 assists in that span. He's on the top on the top pair on the second power play unit, 94th percentile in blocks. And then you can see everything else here is pretty reasonable. The assist numbers are 86th percentile, so that's a little bit better. 9 power play points on the year, but 14 goals in 68 games is really good for a defenseman. Usually there's only about a handful of defensemen that can average around 15 goals a year or more. So Lacombe in his, I believe this is his rookie season, coming out and showing out like this with 14 goals already. And this is not a full 82 game season, so he probably could have been around 20 given that full season, but he's been really impressive, 60% owned, so he's probably not there for you. Now, if you're looking for some other options in terms of D, you would probably be looking more in terms of peripheral D. So I'm going to unfilter this from Jackson Lacombe, and we will filter this data set to just look at defensemen, and we can find a couple of other options for you. And a couple of these options are going to come from the New York Islanders, who have not been necessarily the best team all year long. Tony DeAngelo, still kind of productive, even though he took that huge jump when he first got signed. He's got 5 points in his last 7, 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points on power play 1 still. So that's the main reason to grab him. 23% ownership for a power play 1 quarterback. You could do worse than that. If you're in a points league, this is where I would try to pick up Tony DeAngelo. Shot volume is decent. The assists are pretty good. The blocks are decent at 1.21. But you're mainly looking at offensive production out of him. In terms of what else you can find from the New York Islanders, I might have to scroll for this because this is not necessarily, they're not necessarily the best, most productive defensive core. But Ryan Pulock has been relatively good lately as well. He's usually a hits or blocks defenseman, 2.19 blocks, 1.26 hits, only 5% owned, but he's got 4 points in his last 7 games and a power play point. So I believe he's on the second unit. We'll have to pull this up and see. But yeah, D1 and power play 2 for Pulock. So he has been elevated in the lineup a little bit, getting a little bit of power play time. He's got that bomb from the point. So you're mainly getting him for the hits and blocks, but to get a little bit of offensive production in there is nice as well. The other option that you could look at, there's Adam Pelech, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend, but the other option from the Islanders is Romanov. He's usually a hits and blocks menace, and if you look at his file, that's what he's been doing all season long. 100th percentile in blocks. That's 2.64 blocks per game, 2.37 hits per game, 27% owned because people are aware of the fact that he's one of the elite hits and blocks D in all of fantasy. He's on the second pair, no power play time, but the penalty kill is going to help you get these shot blocks as well. So 18 points in 59 games is not great. The goal scoring's low. The assists are relatively low. The shot volume is relatively low. No power play time, but you're just getting those hits and blocks out of Romanov. And if that's what you need in a categories league in a week like this, he would be a decent option for you. There is one other defenseman that I did want to talk about, and I don't necessarily see him as I shifted this and messed up my entire formatting, which sucks. But yeah, we have one other defenseman is Connor Clifton. I had somebody in our Discord ask about Caden Gooley versus Connor Clifton for a weekend ad, and I said basically I've never recommended Connor Clifton. I don't really think of him as a fantasy option, but look at these hits and blocks numbers. 95th percentile in hits, 90th in blocks. You just don't get any offensive production usually, but he's got 5 assists in his last 7 games. So for whatever reason, he seems to be a little bit more offensively productive in the last 2 weeks or so. No goals on the season. It's hard to imagine a guy playing 65 games and playing a regular shift and not having even one just bounce off of somebody and go in. But that's the case with Clifton. So you're getting almost no offensive production, maybe a couple of assists here and there, but another decent hits and blocks option. Of the two, you look at Romanov, he's the more blocks heavy guy. And then in terms of Clifton, you're getting more hits heavy. So 2.88 hits per game, 1.57 blocks per game. And he would be a reasonable option in a 6-game week for Buffalo. They're kind of playing out the string, but they could play spoilers down the stretch. So it's worth mentioning him there. Another guy that I kind of have a love-hate relationship with in general is Keandre Miller. He's got 5 points in his last 5 games, 2 goals, 3 assists. He's on the second power play unit. They never use that unit, even though they are, I think, 2 for their last 46 on the power play. They refuse to put that second unit out there for whatever reason. He's going to get you some shot blocks, 1.43, 1.46 hits per game. And he had that beautiful snipe a couple of games ago where he put one past Gustafsson top corner. He does have that in him, so he can be a little bit more offensive than some of these other guys. I just wouldn't expect too much out of Miller because the Rangers have been abysmal. They got shut out today as I was recording this video, so I'm a little bit sour, which you can probably tell in this video. But up next, let's take a look at Now up first, we'll talk about the potential starters that you can get for this upcoming week, and there are a bunch of guys with 6-game weeks. We'll start it off with the Detroit tandem. You've got Cam Talbot at 42% ownership. He's got 2 wins in his last 5, which isn't great, but a 2.4 goals against and a .919 save percentage is really excellent for a guy who has kind of taken over that starter role, even though they've got 3 goalies there. Mrazek is out. They've got Alex Lyon as their backup. Lyon, he's got 1 win in his last 3, but a 3.45 goals against and an .855 save percentage. So Lyon is not the best option. If, for whatever reason, Mrazek comes back, he would be a pickup because they have 2 back-to-backs in this 6-game sample size. So they will probably have to use another goaltender. It's either going to be Lyon or it will be Mrazek. But if you can find Talbot, you can get the starter who's going to get at least 4 games. At 42% ownership, he may or may not be there for you. He's been reasonable all year long. 902 is about average, a little bit below average. He's under 500 on the year. Goals against average is 3, but he's well below that lately, and his save percentage is elevated, so he's been playing really well lately. You can see that in the trend from this 22nd onward. The last 2 weeks, he's been trending upwards. So he would be one of your better options for a starter this week. Now, there are a couple of others that you can find, and one of them I talked about last video. James Reimer has taken the starting role in Buffalo because the season's pretty much over. UPL has kind of fallen off here, but he's at 60% ownership. Reimer's at 5% ownership, and Reimer has won his last 5 games. 5 wins in his last 5 games, 3.0 goals against, 904 save percentage is not the best. It's not as good as what we just saw with Talbot, but 5 wins. If you're in a points league and you need those wins, this is the perfect example of a team like Buffalo who's well out of the playoffs playing spoiler down the stretch. So you're getting excellent goaltending from Reimer. He's been playing spoiler in a lot of our fantasy leagues as well. I had a guy that we'll talk about later in Eric Comrie who I needed a goaltending win from. They play Buffalo, and Reimer stands on his head and steals the game, and I ended up losing in a playoff matchup that I desperately needed. So he's been playing spoiler in fantasy and in real life. You can go out and grab him in pretty much any league size. At 5% ownership, you could do a lot worse than James Reimer, and they are also on a 6-game week. They do have a back-to-back, so they'll have to use some other goaltender. It'll probably be UPL, but I don't know if he'll get all 6. This is a case of a guy playing extremely well, and they're just riding the hot hand. As you know, kind of this different story with Talbot. He's more of the starter compared to a guy like James Reimer. But there is another potential starter that you can go out there and find, and that is Calvin Pickard. So Skinner is out. I don't have an injury update on him, but in the meantime, if Pickard's going to be their starter at 30% ownership, what I like about his file, 20 wins in 32 games. That's really decent. 2.7 goals against is as well. Unfortunately, he's well below expected in terms of goals saved above expected. Not a lot of save volume. And the team defense is really good, so they are still missing their 2 big guns at the time of recording. Draisaitl's out, McDavid's out. So they're going to be starved for offense, which means they might focus on that defensive game as they try to lock it up for playoffs. So you could benefit from that. He's got 3 wins in his last 5, 2.2 goals against, 901 save percentage, and they do have a 6-game week next week. So if you're looking time, so this is definitely worth having on your radar. Now, there's one other guy who is technically a starter. They do have 6 games, and they are technically making a playoff push, and he is winning games. He's got 3 wins in his last 4, and that is Elvis Merzlikins. But you look at the numbers, and you just don't want anything in any of these categories. 5 goals against average, 843 save percentage. Both are terrible. So you're only going to pick him up for wins. If you're in a points league and you get those extra points for wins, that's the only reason to grab him. And you're going to hope that Columbus makes a push down the stretch to try to make it competitive and get in that last wild card spot. But you can see here from the 8th down all the way down to from I guess he was a 62, now down to a 53. Just not a good stretch of hockey for Merzlikins in terms of what he does with his save percentage and goals against. Total save volume is there because the team defense isn't great. He's exactly 500 on the year, so he does seem to get the wins. I don't know if they will go to the backup for any of these games this week, but they do have a 6-game week. I don't think they have any back-to-backs. I'd have to double check that, but again, not the best starting option. Same thing with Sam Ersson. I'm not even going to recommend Sam Ersson. He's technically a starter. You can get him at 16%, but 4 goals against average, .835 save percentage. And Philly's just playing out the string here. They have been getting absolutely creamed lately, so I would not recommend going out and picking him up. I personally wouldn't pick up Merzlikins, but there's a number of starting options that I've just given you, so there's kind of a little bit of a choice that you can have, and a bunch of those have 6-game weeks. But you may be looking for that perfect spot start, and if you are, there are a number of options. One of the themes of this week will be the teams that are in contention, that are already in the playoffs, resting their starters. So you might not see Jordan Binnington as much this week. You may see Joel Hofer. Obviously, the Blues are red hot, an 11-game win streak, and that stretches to Hofer as well. He's won his last 5 appearances with a 1.77 and a .922 save percentage in that span. It's been a little bit less productive over the last 3, but he is still getting it done. The team defense is excellent. As we mentioned, they're red hot entering into this week, so I would expect them to rest Binnington a little bit. You could get Hofer at 12%, and he would probably get at least 2 starts next week. I don't believe they have back-to-backs. Again, I'd have to double-check that, but with that, they might just give him a couple of games anyway to try to rest Binnington for the playoffs, so that's how you could benefit from picking up Joel Hofer. I do want to mention another exact same situation where they could potentially rest their starter, and that is Dave Riddick. The Kings are basically unbeatable at home. If you see Riddick in a spot start at home, it's not as much of a lock as Kemper at home, but it is probably still worth the bet. 12% ownership, 97th percentile team defense is why you're going to own him. The numbers on the season haven't been great in terms of save percentage, but the goals against is good because of that team defense, and the wins have been there because of that. 2 wins in his last 3, 2.3 goals against, .918 save percentage is pretty good, and you can see him trending up from the 22nd onward. So he's been getting it done, and they might have to rest Kemper for the playoff push. Obviously, Kemper has won a cup before. He knows what it takes. Maybe they're going to rest him down the stretch, give a couple games to Riddick, so you can benefit from that as well. And then another guy that I've talked about pretty much every week in this goaltending section, Casey DeSmith. He's currently playing right now, so I will have to kind of finagle these numbers a little bit, but he's got 2 wins in his previous 2 games with a 1.5 goals against and a .964 save percentage. So he had a 46 save game with a .958 save percentage a couple games ago. He follows that up with a 35 save effort, .972 save percentage. And as I'm recording this right now, he has 31 saves and a .912 save percentage in this game against Pittsburgh. That could change, obviously, as it's going on right now. It's in the 3rd period. But he's been a very rock-solid option in terms of a spot start. If you ever see him in, it's worth the bet. 19% ownership. That's pretty high for a backup, but you know what you're getting out of him. The goals saved above expected is excellent. The team defense is surprisingly a little bit lower than what I would have expected, but 56th percentile is still pretty good. The save percentage on the season, .922 all year long, 94th percentile, 2.3 goals against is excellent. So all season long, he's been a really good backup option. The same can't be said for Charlie Lindgren. This is not a guy I'm going to recommend. I had somebody reach out asking if they should pick him up. I believe it was Friday night game. He needed goals against and save percentage. I said, don't do it. He's been bad at both all season long. .896, 2.7 goals against. He's got an .871 in his last 4 games with a 2.75. This is another case where they may rest Logan Thompson. You may see Lindgren available on the wire. His ownership is way too high for the numbers that he's been putting up. I just wouldn't necessarily think of this as the best potential option. So maybe not the best guy to go out and pick up. So if you want that better pickup, a guy that I touched on a little bit earlier, and I did pick up one game out of the last 4 that he's played, Eric Comrie. 7% ownership. This is another case where they may rest Hellebuck for the playoff stretch. Excellent team defense. Same situation as Riddick is in. .914 save percentage on the year, 2.4 goals against. He's been really good, except for when I've owned him. So if you look at his last 4 starts, he had a .955, .933, And then the game I wanted him to play, he got a 7.50 goal save percentage and was terrible, lost me my week. And then he goes back right after that and puts up a shutout. So the good thing for you guys is I'm pretty much done. I'm out. I'm not in any championships as of time of recording. I have one potential chance to be in a championship, so I won't be grabbing Comrie. So that's good news for you. You can go out and grab him and probably expect a really good start out of him. Again, in the last 2 weeks, he's got 1 win in 2 games, 2.0 goals against, 905 save percentage with a shutout. But that just shows you that 750 save percentage and the 100 save percentage kind of averages out to this. So it's kind of hit or miss with Eric Comrie, but you're probably going to get a little bit of volume out of him with the potential of having Hellebuck potentially rested for the playoffs. So I'm kind of rambling on here, so I think I'm going to cut it there. If you've watched to the end of this video, if you've watched all season long, I want to thank you for your support. It means the world to me. It may not look like it in terms of how many videos I'm putting out, but I am constantly working, trying to make this content better, trying to make my tools better and more useful for you guys. So if you have been along for the ride at any point throughout this last couple of years, I want to thank you for that. I will be doing some off-season content. If you want something specific, leave me a comment in the comments section below for some off-season content. But thank you again for all of your support, and I will see you in the next one. I just don't know what type of video that will be. I wish you all the best of luck in your fantasy championships if that's still going on. And one quick reminder to fill out that draft strategy form with where you finished at the end of the season. But thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.